Hi, Evan Fisher. So nice to see you again to talk about this delightful subject that everybody wants to hear about. You're like the Santa Claus of fall. You know that, right?
It's an honor. Thank you so much. We love talking about fall every year.
Well, we love hearing about it too. It is a hot topic with everyone. And you are the creator of this amazing website called Explore Fall. And we've had like these maps in the past, but this is a whole different level when it comes to fall foliage and understanding what's going on around the country. So, can you give me a brief synopsis of what Explore Fall is and how that all got started?
Yeah, so Explore Fall sort of came out of this desire to have higher resolution, higher accuracy fall foliage predictions. I was regularly frustrated a few years ago trying to determine when peak color would be here in my location in Western North Carolina, and I just couldn't quite nail that down with the existing maps on the internet. So I used my background in meteorology to create this weather-based fall foliage prediction that allows us to really make a short range and long term forecast of fall color progression all throughout the United States while accounting for complex variables like terrain, dry soils, drought, all of these different variables that factor into fall's splendid colors.
And I know you don't want to give all your secrets away, but can you take us into like a little bit of the technology and what you're using and how this all works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we start with the weather data. That is, before every season, we need to make these long-term predictions, and that has to be based off of climatological normals because we don't know exactly what the weather is going to be like 90 days in advance. But we start with these temperatures and precipitation anomalies coming out of the summer to understand which areas have maybe had a lot of stress, and stress might look like unusual changing of the leaves. Maybe late July, early August, we start seeing some colors, and we call those summer colors, but they're an indication of how fall colors may progress later in the season. And then as we get into September, that's when it's really go time. We're watching every single day how the temperatures are playing out. And those temperatures are the biggest driver of all of this. But we would be remiss if we didn't also recognize the input of just daylight hours. As the days grow shorter, that's what truly kind of opens the door for the fall color change once the temperatures are sufficiently cold.
So is it mainly summer weather that's impacting it, or does it go back farther than that? Like, can last winter impact what we see this fall?
There can be some impacts even from last fall. Now, we don't incorporate that directly into our model because there's some literature on it, but it's a little uncertain exactly how that works out. But certainly going back into the spring, we have plenty of effects. So there's reason to believe that an early leaf out, so the leaves coming out early in the spring, can lead to an early fall. That's a bit of an unusual thing and seems too simple, but we've seen evidence of this in the higher latitudes, especially in New England, southeastern Canada. In the southeast, that doesn't seem to apply quite as much, but certainly even before we get to summer, we're paying attention to how those leaves are progressing.
And then you're also like updating this as the season kicks off, right? So you're starting to get actual reports of fall foliage and then you work it into the model. Is that what happens?
We do. Yes, we have plenty of manual overrides. So the automated model is wonderful, but as we receive ground reports, the local reports will always be better than our model. So we do our best to incorporate that local knowledge that people are so kind to share with us and make these little tweaks all over the place. Oftentimes, those are tweaks just on the order of a few days, adjusting that peak timing. But every once in a while, we have a real issue where the weather-based model is good, but it's not perfect. We're still learning, and it may be off by 7 to 10 days. And that's always, truthfully, I find that to be a great opportunity for us to learn and adapt for the next season.
Yeah, you've been doing this for a few years now, right? So what has changed here in the past few years? What have you learned? What have you updated?
Yeah, I've learned to not blindly trust the automated model quite so much. That
It's a good lesson.
It's a great starting point. But once things start getting complex in late September, if you don't keep an eye on it, it can cause some trouble. And there are so many eyes on this map these days. Our goal was to help people find the best color. And if we're doing anything other than that, we're going the wrong direction. So I am spending as many hours as possible in this, adjusting those manual overrides. Just going into this season, we've made that a lot easier to make quick manual updates. And we've already been actually using that so far this August with the fall colors that are emerging in Alaska.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I saw the map is live. We're just getting into September here. So what can we expect for this year? What can you give us any sort of little details on spoiler alert for the fall season 2025?
Absolutely. I'm leaning towards an earlier fall this season, especially across the Intermountain West and as well in New England. We've got a lot of drought in both of those areas. Really dry summer in Colorado, and then also this dry late summer into early fall that's emerging in New England. So both of those factors like to accelerate fall colors. They can also lead to some stress. Precipitation impacts are so funny with fall foliage because a little bit of drought can delay the colors. A lot of drought will accelerate them. Any degree of drought will just generally make it chaotic. But across the board, we think those colors will be earlier. I also would expect to see some premature leaf drop, which is where in September we have some dry leaves kind of just falling off the trees before they get a chance to turn all of those brilliant colors. In the southeast, southern Appalachians, where we are based, it's shaping up to be a beautiful season. We mentioned that the fall impacts of the previous year can sometimes bleed over into the next fall. And we did have Hurricane Helene here last fall, which was one of the greatest wind events this region has ever seen. And yet the trees look magnificent going into this season. We've had a very wet summer. Temperatures have not been extreme, and I'm greatly encouraged by what we're seeing around here.
Yeah, you brought up Helene, and I want to ask you about that because you do live in Asheville, and I noticed that during this event there was a struggle for information, right? Like damage, where's the worst damage? Where are the trees down? Where's the flooding? What's going on? Nobody outside of Asheville, and even in Asheville, knew what was going on. And then I saw you on Twitter using what it seemed like this same technology to really benefit the people of Asheville and understanding what was going on. Can you explain that whole thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Helene was this chaotic period where we knew it was going to be bad, but then suddenly we were without communication with the outside world for days and no power for weeks, no water for months. And in the time that led out of that, I was able to adapt some of Explore Fall's kind of data processing approaches to especially identify where there was severe tree damage. So it wasn't immediately apparent after Helene how bad the tree damage was on the higher elevation locations. It was extreme in the valleys, don't get me wrong. There were trees on houses everywhere. But when you got above 3,000, 4,000 feet, there were some tree slopes they lost 80% of their trees. It's remarkable and shocking just how severe that damage was. So we were able to use some of that satellite data that we also use for Explore Fall to estimate where those most severe damage patches occurred.
Wow. And then, am I getting this right? You were also using reports that people were putting out there from their on social media and then inputting that as well in the same way that people input the fall foliage information?
A little bit, yes. We were using some of those damage reports just to paint a picture because this was a very complex event over a large area. And even though I was right at the epicenter of it, I had no clue what happened just one mountain
Right.
over. So it was so
Yeah.
crucial to piece the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah. Did anybody reach out to you for like more of that information, like insurance companies or the government? There has to be a need for this information.
Right. Yes, I did. I talked and worked with a gentleman who had some insurance needs. To be honest, this whole area is plagued by so many insurance issues right now coming out of this storm. Was it water that did the damage? Was it wind that did the damage? So I did have the opportunity to use some of that data to try to help one gentleman in the area who completely lost his home and his horses and all of his property. But for the most part, there's just so overwhelming how much is out there. I think everyone is still trying to figure out their own recovery strategy, and it's a year later. We're still figuring that out.
Yeah, how did you balance that as a meteorologist and also a Hurricane Helene victim? Like, that's a weird combination, right?
It was a couple months of panic. I was in my final year of grad school at the time, and we were fully offline for 12 days from a little hotspot that someone brought into downtown, which put me personally far behind on all of my schoolwork. And then coming out of Helene, you just have to make sense of what all happened, how many people in our very tight knit and small community. Asheville is I think 60 to 80,000 people. But when you have 48 fatalities in Buncombe County in this particular area, everyone knows someone. It's just that small. So there was a pretty extended grieving period, I would say. Not just, I mean, for the people, for the homes, for the beautiful places that were lost. And now that we're going into the fall, I think we're all just holding our breath and hoping and praying that we get this nice, beautiful fall foliage season. We have no storms. We could really use a nice dry stretch to repave some roads. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and people depend on that tourism in Asheville because fall is such a big time there. When is peak time in like Western North Carolina?
Yeah, so the Asheville area will be late October, generally October 25th to November 5th, somewhere in there. Depends on the year. Across the board, we start seeing those colors emerge on the large scale around October 10th. So last year was a total flop because no one could get into Western North Carolina at that time.
Yeah.
So many businesses have left and unfortunately gone under in the last year. It's shocking, even just here in Asheville, how many of those small businesses. And I can't imagine what it must be like in some of those even more tourism dependent small towns just outside of Asheville. So we are really hoping and praying that this is a great season that can bring us back a little bit.
What about the Blue Ridge Parkway? Because I know it sustained some damage. Is there any information you can give us about that? Because that's where everybody goes for fall colors, right?
It is. I know, and my heart really goes out to all of those workers because they're working so hard to get it reopened. There's one major stretch, in my opinion, that's still closed. That's a big deal for fall foliage, leaf peepers. So they did just recently reopen the parkway from Asheville to Mount Pisgah, which is this very popular kind of fall foliage location on the southwest side of town. It's beautiful. It gets a lot of traffic. But the other side of town, northeast of Asheville, heading up towards Mount Mitchell, the highest peak east of the Mississippi, that is still closed. It's estimated to reopen this fall, but there's not an exact date on that. And that could mean, I'm not sure, it could mean November 1st. And if it doesn't get reopened until November, it won't be for a lack of trying, but it will be too late, unfortunately, for the leaf peepers. So that plays a huge role in how much tourism traffic comes up here from Charlotte and Greenville.
Yeah, and it's important for people to know too that even if there's a section closed, like you hop off and then you hop back on. Like I was up there in that area that was closed recently and I still got to go on the parkway. We just like hopped off for a little bit and then hopped back on in the area that it was closed. So still
Absolutely.
very usable.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
which we're so grateful for.
So another part of your website that I think is really, really fascinating is this archive. So I want to know how you're doing this. How are you coming up with fall foliage information from 30 years ago and putting it out there? Like it's wild to me. Where does that come from?
Yeah, so this is one of those cases where we have to put complete trust in the automated model, the weather-based model, which I don't love, but we don't have manual reports from the 80s on fall colors. So we do
Yeah.
apply these algorithms that we have for predicting fall color based on temperature and precipitation and those sorts of variables. We apply that to the past 30 years worth of data. And though there are certainly errors here and there, I think on average, it's a great resource for helping us identify trends. Unfortunately, we've had so much development going on just in the rush of the first 3 years of Explore Fall. I think there are still a lot more trends that can be flushed out of that data set. We just haven't had the time to get to yet. Trends relating to climate change. We do know that these fall colors are getting later, but precisely what is that looking like? How is that manifested? And to what degree have they gotten later over the last 30 years? I'm not exactly sure. So much to find out.
You should hook up with the Climate Central people and start throwing some data together there.
Agreed. That would be a fantastic partnership.
And it's like there's something so nostalgic about it too, because I got like a little emotional because I had this picture of me. I grew up in New England. I had this picture of me and my siblings carving pumpkins, and there's like a date on the picture. It's like October 20th, 1992, or something like that. And then I went to your website and I popped in that date. And I was like, oh, the colors were peak on that day that I was carving pumpkins in this picture with my siblings. The colors were peak in my hometown in Connecticut. And the fact that I could look that up was like, I don't know, it like made me feel really, really good.
That is so sweet. I'm so happy to hear that. There is value there. We're always so
Yeah.
unsure with those older years because we don't have as many reports. Something like the 90s, that wasn't that long ago. Thankfully, we
Yeah.
have photos right there
Yeah.
from people that people send in from their childhood. And we don't get too many reports like that, but thank you, Emily. That's wonderful validation that you get to share.
Yeah, yeah. And it's cool also that I can look at my hometown in the years that I grew up and click through the years and like on Halloween, some years it was past peak and some years it was peak. And so I'm trying to like remember, oh, what did I dress up as that Halloween? Or I'm sure there's pictures of us walking around the neighborhood and I wonder what the leaves looked like. So it's really, it like, spurs these thoughts of childhood that are really fun. And then I started thinking, like, why do we love fall colors so much? Maybe you have some insight into this, especially women, because like we go nuts every September. We grab the sweaters and the hats and start decorating our porches and pumpkin spice lattes. So what is it about fall colors that get us
That is
so riled up?
That's such a great question. I wish I could put my finger on it, but I think it's just a simpler time of the year. It's before the craziness of the holidays. The kids are back in school, and it's cool. I don't know about everyone else, but I by July, August, I am just so sick of summer and sweating
Mhm.
and being outside. And I want to be outside and be comfortable. And that reprieve is so refreshing. I think it bleeds into all of the different aspects of our lifestyle. I've been burning a fall candle for like 4 weeks just to pretend like it's already fall. I'm wearing flannel today. It's August, almost September.
Yeah, same.
It's nice to
Yeah.
embrace that.
Yeah, so it's like the anticipation of the fun holidays to come, maybe.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, I was curious too, has anybody approached you for use of this technology in ways that surprised you? Like, I think last time we talked about, like, what if somebody's trying to make a movie and they want it set in like this area in this fall season, but they want to be accurate on what it looked like? Has anybody approached you with that sort of information request?
I would be so impressed by a filmmaker if they were to pay attention to that level of detail, and I
I guess
hope that
that's true.
happens one day. I haven't seen that in particular, but we have had other requests relating to hiking is a huge faction of what we do in the fall, and
Yeah.
we've had requests relating to, hey, how can we apply these forecasts to specific hikes to understand how those colors are changing as you go up and down in elevation. And while that's still in the realm of general fall colors and weather and outdoor recreation, so it's not too surprising. It is that next step beyond just what we're providing as is, people thinking outside of the box in ways that they can apply those predictions to help more people find the best colors.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier finishing up grad school, and people are listening to the podcast and may not be able to see just how young you are. But this is very impressive for somebody of your age. And you've been doing this for years now. You started this in undergrad. So give me the latest on you. You've graduated from grad school. Do you have another job? Is this still your side hustle? What's going on with you?
Yeah, so I graduated in May, and this is still a side hustle for me. Maybe one day it will be full time. But to be honest, I do have a full time position, and I love it so much. I don't want Explore Fall to become too much. So I currently work for Monarch Weather and Climate Intelligence. It's with an excellent group of meteorologists who they were former Weather Channel. Now they work
Yeah.
kind of in the private
Female
industry.
leadership. I love it.
Yes, exactly. We've got, if you're familiar with any of these people, Catherine
Yeah.
Prosiv and Crystal Ager, and our team is so kind and brilliant. We just get to spend every day. I feel like I get to play in the sandbox. I get to create these new data portals to help clients mitigate weather and climate risk. And I could not be happier working with this team and doing what we do. So yes, it's like I've graduated and I get the best of both worlds. I get the fall after hours, the fall foliage work after hours this time of year. And then the rest of the year, I'm working my dream job. So I'm blessed and thankful.
Yeah, that's awesome. They're lucky to have you too. That's great. Is there something that you think down the road might become year round? Like it's so seasonal now. You're doing this in the fall, but like you had mentioned before, like maybe some sort of spring forecast or maps that are needed different times of year. Are you still kind of exploring those options?
Yeah, absolutely. So we did step into the winter space a little bit last year, working with Pure Michigan, which is the tourism board up in Michigan, to create this winter sports interactive map dashboard that allowed folks who they want to go snowmobiling or cross country skiing to gauge exactly how much snow is currently on the ground, what the forecast is, and then in the long term how that snow cover changes on average over the course of the season. So we're starting to kind of bleed into other sectors, other times of the year. But I would also say, because I love the work that I do with Monarch so much and Explore Fall is solidified where it's at, we're not aggressively pursuing too much other development. I love where it's at now.
Yeah, awesome. I still think you should do that rhododendron forecast, though, especially in Western North Carolina. I was hiking there recently and I was like, there are so many rhododendrons here. I'd love to know when they were blooming.
I know, and they're so chaotic. It's so
Are
hard.
they?
Fall foliage is already hard, and then we get to roto season. And I took an attempt at that a couple of years ago to predict and show where those roto colors were changing, and I was blown away by how chaotic it was.
Really?
That might be just one of those things where you have to step out the door and cross your fingers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, interesting. Good to know. Cool. Evan, is there anything else you want to share about Explore Fall or the upcoming season?
Oh, it's just shaping up to be a great year. Please send us your reports. We want to be as accurate as possible, not only for you, but also for your neighbors in your area. So please let us know how things are looking, and we will make the fastest updates that we can. It'll help us prepare more for next year, and we just greatly appreciate everyone's support. This is year 3, I suppose. We're having more fun than we did in year 1. It's hard to believe because year 1 was a blast. So thank you to everyone who tunes in and looks at our fall foliage forecasts.
What's the best way to do the reports? Do they tweet you? Do they send in online on the website?
Great question. Yep. So you can tweet at me. We're on Instagram and Facebook, Explore Fall there as well. Or you can email me, evan@explorefall.com. We've got plenty of people who do all different methods of submission. It all works.
Are you still providing the maps for free for TV stations on your meteorologists?
Absolutely. We still make those free for any and all TV affiliates. So national or local, reach out and we'd be happy to connect you with that data to help your local viewers see the best colors.
Evan Fisher, Explore Fall, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Emily.